a lot of questions are actually like in a good spot right now. Like there's a lot of things that I had, and I feel like a lot of people had that were somewhat answered this chapter, but also a couple stuff that's on the horizon. Like can Nero actually fight? I want to see that a lot. And there was a part that Shura had that I thought made a lot of sense. And again, it was one of the questions on him that I've had for a while. I don't think I've really talked about it that much. It's mostly just like on his very radical kind of approach to the robots in the narrow, like in the whole Narrow Empire and the Aoi Cosmos, because there's like a part in this chapter where you have Jaguar and he's teamed up with this guy named Rickard, I think his name Ricard, and he's like the CEO of the largest robot manufacturing company within the galaxy. And it just makes a lot of sense that he would say, like, of course I'm not going to side with the Empire, like, given the chance. Like, I would assume that if he was by himself, he wouldn't do anything, because, like, what would he do by himself other than, I guess, like, maybe form, like, a super robot army? But then when you really think about it, like, for a massive robot company owner, it would make a lot of sense for him to have, like, some, like, secret way to militarize his forces, if like, it ever came down to a scenario like what we're having now. But the whole thing in that, I was like, well, why would Shura, like, do this if, like, there's bound to be people that are going to be against it? It's not like the OA Cosmos was, like, going to blindly just go with what he said. We even saw that scene after, like, his whole, like, point on television, that there were people that were indifferent about it. Like, he didn't have everyone's takes on, like, in a positive way, but he was looking at it more on part of his plan, and I do like that. Also, I didn't really realize this until this chapter, that I thought was really funny, is I've watched some of the, like, Fairy Tail episodes where they have, like, really long recaps, and I'm sure, like, a lot of other people can think of, like, series where they'll have, like, a 3-4 minute plus recap at the start of an episode sometimes, and it's like, you guys are just putting that in there to save time you have to put, I mean, time and budget, time and money, and, effort into animating some parts of the show, because obviously, like, doing a recap is way easier than doing full new scenes, and I can understand that, it saves them time, money, and all that stuff, and it makes it so they can hopefully make later scenes more, like, badass, and was the Sakuga term for like, what they saved in the amount of, like, couple minutes that they put towards there. But it's funny, it's like, I didn't think about it until now, but Xiao Mei kind of is, like, a way for Moshima to cheat that a little bit in the manga, because you have Xiao Mei talking, and she's just recapping for what I think it's like 4 pages almost, like 3 pages that she's just kind of, 3 pages she's recapping, and most of the drawings is just like up close-ups to her face and space, and then like chibi drawings, and I like, that's the point of her character. She's like a narrator, she's like a fourth wall breaking character. I understand that entirely. I just thought that was kind of funny, because I never really figured out, like, where that kind of sat for her until I read this chapter. I'm like, Mishima just found a way to kind of, like, save himself a little bit of time, I would imagine, because, like, Mishima's a fast artist, and I would be willing to bet he can do these 3 pages of Xiao Mei recapping. I bet he could do that, like, did all 3 of those pages in, like, an hour and a half. Like, that probably for him is, like, the same thing as, like, the anime people. It just saves them loads of time. But Jaguar in this chapter, that was really cool, as well as the Wraith Master reference. I was happy about that, like, the Deep Snow, like, the temple of where Nero, like, on planet Nero 1, because this is like, hey, while this is happening on Nero 66, this is what's happening on Nero 1, obviously the main temple where Nero himself is. I do think it's weird when characters in series, I think Frieza did it as well, when they name the planets after themselves. I think it'd just be odd. Like, it seems like almost kind of lazy. Like, I get, like, you're doing it, like, in a way to, like, show that you've conquered a lot of planets. But I would sit there, like, if I was, like, some other space ruler guy, and I had all my planets named, and then, like, I have this guy who just doesn't have any of his planets really, like, intricately named, I'd be like, man, you are uncreative. It's like when you play somebody in Pokemon, and they don't name any of their Pokemon. It's just be like, man, come on. You don't have to do it, but it's an added flavor bit. I'd be so disappointed in Nero if I met him. But, like, yeah, the Deep Snow reference I thought was cool, that being one of the characters from Wraith Master. And Fabiano, I'm bummed out Fabiano got fodderized. Like, I understand, like, entirely the setup. Like, him versus Jaguar, there was no way he was going to win. We saw where the Oceans were strength-wise, and Fabiano could have easily been like the one that was way more powerful than the other 5. Like that could have easily been a thing. He's the oldest. He's not one of the newer generation people, and you could have just had him as like just a higher tier. Like he could have been one of the ones with Overdrive. Out of all of the Oceans, he could have had Overdrive, and it would have made sense. So obviously he would have had his Ether Gear the longest and stuff. But I'm bummed out because his Ether Gear was cool. Like he's like getting ready to go against to kind of like step out. They know that Ricard has teamed up with the Interstellar Union and stuff, and that's when Jaguar shows up. And I'm not gonna lie, I saw those like slit eyes, and I know that his name is Jaguar. He's got like the spots on his face, and it seems really obvious where his power was gonna go. I was hoping so bad it was gonna be like, you know, the slit eyes and stuff, that Mishima was gonna do some Dragon Slayer like thing, kind of make him a Dragon Slayer at Eden Zero, maybe like some form of sick Jaguar dragon. But that's not the case. He actually just went for the Jaguarness. Like he just decided to go in, and this was another example of Mishima as well. Like it's weird to me when people act like Mishima doesn't go dark sometimes. Like he definitely is somebody that prefers happier scenes, but when he wants to show some brutal scenes, like for instance, it was like the very beginning of the Sirius Island like invasion of Grimoire Heart, and you had Zancro like 5 seconds before like he actually started fighting, just burns multiple people in his guild alive just for like saying that Natsu was strong. He wasn't having it. But we have Jaguar come out, and he ends up activating his Ether Gear. I don't think this is his Overdrive. I don't think this is any way his Overdrive. I'm guessing this is just more of his regular kind of Ether Gear. Like, his and Homura's are both really weird, because like we've seen from Shiki and Jin that once your Ether Gear progresses, eventually the lines start to come off your body. I've just been saying pseudo Overdrive for the longest time, but you eventually get to that state, and then you, like, the state after that is Overdrive, like that we've seen, like, you know, we've seen before. And I'm still wondering if the Overdrive that like Shiki and the Eden Zero crew have is actually like full Overdrive or just the first state, just because Draken Joe's was like across his whole body, whereas the rest of like the entire main cast and everybody else's Overdrives we've seen it doesn't seem to have nearly as dramatic of an alteration. Like, it changes their outfits, and they get some kind of like perks and just changes to their design, but it's not nearly as dramatic. It might just be an Ether Gear difference, but I'd like to believe that their Ether Gear, or their Overdrives rather, aren't peaked out. Like, maybe this is like the first stage and like there's still 2 more to go or something, because we don't know how long Eden Zero is going to go. I don't think Mishima's going to make it as long as Fairy Tail, especially like this arc is already apparently coming to a pretty swift conclusion. And I know like you can count all the stuff in Forester as part of this, but it, like outside of that, like if you count that as well, obviously it's like 50-something chapters, like pretty big, the biggest arc in the series, but he seems to be sticking way closer to like his older style of like how he would do arcs. He would have like multiple like 30+ chapter arcs, somewhere between 20 to 30 chapters. Like that's how he used to do things like prior to Sirius Island. Sirius Island is where he started kind of like make them longer in the end that Grand Magic Games, did Tartarus Alvarez, 100 Years Quest now. But I think that he's just trying to like set up a lot of stuff. He might be doing it kind of like how he did with Sirius Island. Like prior to that, for the people who haven't read Fairy Tail, the arcs are, I mean, as well as like the Elf arc in Black Clover, the previous arcs were their own arcs, but they each had little bits that connected to a larger arc. So that might be what Mishima is also doing here. Maybe the next arc after the Aoi Cosmo arc will have some larger scale kind of event that is the result of everything that happened prior to this. And to a degree, you can kind of say that was the case going up until like the Ziggy reveal at like, was it chapter 100 or chapter 9? I have to go back and look exactly what chapter it was, but anyway, Jaguar goes in his form. He's pretty much just like a big werecat, and he's like tearing through these dudes. Like I said, Mishima isn't like a super gory guy. Like even the times where he puts gore, he like censors it a little bit. Like for instance, there's a part where Kid Jalal in Fairy Tail, he crushes a dude's head under his foot, and you see him put his foot on his head. You see like the head stop motion, and you see the blood like explosion. But Mishima's not showing like what it looks like to pop somebody's head like a berry. He's gonna do what he can to kind of like push where he's at, but not like too much for the demographic. Like you see Jaguar, he's just tearing through these guys, and they're mostly silhouettes. You do see a little bit of like arms. There's one arm that isn't fully silhouetted, but I mean, like, he's drawn severed limbs before. It's a little different from, like, the limb, like, seeing the severed leg versus, like, somebody who's, like, torn in half, and you see, like, blood spraying out of, like, all their orifices and stuff. But he's just ripping through them. I was sad, though, that Fabiano was fodder. Not fodder, because, like I said, I would have been able to even say, like, before going to this arc, after we saw the first ocean, we have an idea of where the oceans were strength-wise. I didn't think that they were going to be able to fight Jaguar, because the Galactica and the Interstellar should be somewhat even. We don't know who's, like, stronger between what and where, but Jaguar being on level with Nero, I would assume, just because that's what would make sense. Assuming Nero can fight, we don't know exactly how he's going to fight or what, but given the end of the chapter, I assume he's going to have some form of battle prowess. But if he was anywhere even remotely close to Nero, I wouldn't see him, you know, I wouldn't see him even getting close to, like, Fabiano not even getting close to Jaguar. No way. Like, that wasn't going to happen. Like, he just got completely mauled. But it makes me sad because there's a cool part after he uses his ether gear. Even when he's, like, he first activates it, he's got, like, the shadow on his eyes. He looks cool because I like his... I don't know what, like, it's not Victorian, but kind of just, like, this old classical style, like, this kind of, like, higher-end, noble-like dude. He's got, I don't know what that kind of, like, weird pirate blouse thing is called, but he's got that on. It looks cool because he looks very properly dressed, like, very high class, but he's also a fighter. Like, he just puts up his fist, he gets this LA crystal on it. It looks badass. Like, his power was really cool. And I don't know what it is about, like, crystal powers. I've always loved, like, people with crystal abilities. That's probably one of the reasons I like Mars so much in Black Clover. But he's, like, getting no-diffed by Jaguar. And again, I would have guessed this was going to happen. It's a shame that he went up against him. It reminds me a lot of, like, God Serena against Acnologia and stuff. It's like, yeah, it sucks that you got demolished, but it's like, you should know the person in front of you and what they're capable of. Like, Fabiano should have been like, I can't beat this guy. I'm not going to win against this dude. What am I going to do? And then he should have, like, tried to figure out, like, a fallback strategy. Figure out how to tactically, tactically retreat, essentially. Like, figure out how he can stay up while setting up a means to deter or confine Jaguar, pretty much. He should have had that on mind. Because it's, like, the same thing with, like, Godstone. He should have been like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I can guess where you're at, and that's nowhere near where I'm at. Like if you know somebody is, like, in an opposing group, so, like, seemingly on level with your boss, you would know, like, yeah, I can't take this dude. I'm not gonna win. But after that, you have Nero show up, and again, Nero, I'm very curious if he's gonna fight, but Ziggy showing up was really cool. I was definitely excited for that, and it went with one of my hopes is that I didn't think Shiki was going to fight Nero. I didn't think it really made sense after we saw where Shiki was fighting Justice. Justice was just using his, like, base ether gear. He was just using over the eye. He wasn't using overdrive or anything. And he completely ran through Shiki like it was nothing. Shiki wasn't at full power, but I don't think it really would have mattered because, like, Justice was in his, like, base starting set, and he's one of the Interstellar as well. And it would have been really weird if in the month Shiki went from where he was at to, like, he needed his overdrive to defeat Orc, who was, what was he, like, B Squad 6? Like, you know, B Squad 1 was way above them, and then Oceans were way above them. Like, it would have been weird if he completely skipped all of those tiers and went right to, like, Interstellar and Galactica level. I don't think that was going to be the case. My guess was, with the whole setup of Shura, that Shura was going to be Shiki's enemy this arc, and Ziggy versus Nero was going to happen. I didn't think we were going to get a three-way fight between him and Jaguar. That's going to be really cool. I can't wait to see how that goes. Nero, like, I really want to know if Nero can fight, because, like, Jaguar's ether gear was one of the ones that I was most anticipated on. I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more badass. Like, it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. He's a big cat man, but I was hoping something, like, a little bit more... Either, like, I know, like I was saying, like, kind of Dragon Slayer-like, but if it was the big cat one, maybe it'll be in his overdrive to be almost kind of, like, alien-like, like some form of weird space cat. Just because, like, it's badass, but it looks pretty standard. Like, he's like a big, buff, humanoid cat man. I wish I remember the dude from is it Tekken or Street Fighter? The dude with the I think he is also a Jaguar head, and that's probably where Mishima got the idea to put him on. You're some big brawling cat man. But the next chapter was called like read the red thread of fate. That's gonna mean it's gonna be on Azuna, because one thing I do remember about her character in her like whole submission for the contest that she was in, that one was that she had her ether gear had to do with like the red string of fate. So I'm curious as like how Mishima is gonna work that in there and how that's gonna kind of play out. The next fight is gonna be really cool. Getting some strong three-way vibe fights, like back when like Kagura, Minerva, and Urzor fight. So this is gonna be really cool to see go down. Ziggy, like I feel like Ziggy's gonna win. I definitely feel like Ziggy's gonna win because Jaguar can definitely fight. We know Ziggy can fight. I'm still hesitant on the general idea that Nero can fight. I mean, he should be able to like compete somewhat, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to, like, if he's gonna be able to keep up with these two in full. Because when you think about it, Ziggy and Jaguar, though they're not allies, they can single out that Nero is definitely the one that they would be smart to focus on, because he's the bigger thing. It's one of those things that's like, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Because Ziggy's got his own thing going on, but clearly Jaguar has like something against Nero, and it's come to obtain him. So someone like Ziggy, I feel like he would be willing to not work with, but kind of just like I said, not focus on when he goes for Nero. Because in reality, Ziggy is like a greater long scale threat, but Nero is a greater threat at the moment. Like, because he's got this entire force. Because when you think about it, Drac and Joe, like with Elsie, it seems like catching Elsie is the hardest thing because she's always on the move. Whereas with Drac and Joe, not only does he's got the belly goer and stuff, and he's definitely strong, but his biggest thing when you really think about it is his connections, the people that he's got in pocket and stuff. Whereas Nero, he's got an entire cosmos under his control. So if you wanted to go after him, like think about going after Elsie again, it'd be hard to even catch her. Going against Drac and Joe, you would have to worry about what trump cards and what kind of like tricks he's got up his sleeve. Going up against Nero would mean you would have to go through the entire cosmos just to get to him. So it would be a way harder battle just to like kind of go against Nero on a different day at this point. He's right there. You have this big conflict that they're taking advantage of. They got the Rickard dude, and his whole force is helping him out. I think that he's gonna focus on Nero. That just seems to be what makes the most sense to me. I know like the other fights are going on, and like we're definitely getting towards the conclusion arc, but my biggest thing is I want to see where this fight goes. Like the Shura and Shiki stuff is going to be really cool, and I want to see what Shiki's whole Black Sky technique does. But it's definitely my big focus on this three-way fight. This is going to be really sick. And the last bit that was answered in the chapter that like I was thinking about, like, well, why would Shura do all this when it could get such a reaction out of like the people that were against it? And though, like I said, Rickard and stuff like is a clear example of that. But he's just saying that he anticipated this because he wanted to get everybody pretty much to his dad, as well as Rickard, Ziggy, and I would assume he didn't like anticipate Jaguar. But he's like saying that he wanted Ziggy and Nero to fight, and he believes that Ziggy's gonna win. And at that point, because when you think about it, with the All Link, say he did, like Nero dies, and then it's Ziggy. It's like, oh well, he's the more powerful then. Why would you want the more powerful one? And it's like, okay, well he has the All Link. If he activates All Link, he shuts down this robot and is able to take them both out in one fell swoop. It's just for him, it's a smart move. It's definitely good for him on his on his whole setup, and this way he can like become in charge of the little cosmos. But the thing I'm wondering for him, it's like with Jaguar and all the Interstellar there, because you have Justice, you have Eraser. I want to know what his response to them are, because even with his current, like clearly like he was scheming this, like he's definitely got like a plan going on. Even with all this, even with like the cosmos and everything, like he's got all these forces, I don't think he can handle Eraser, Jaguar, and Justice. And Elsie's coming too. And Elsie is like one of those similar things where, similar to like what I was talking about like with Jaguar and Ziggy, I think that though they would want to go after Elsie would probably be more inclined to stop Shura than to just let him go. Like right now, Shura is putting himself in a dangerous spot because he's got all of these really dangerous people adjacent to him right now, and he's setting himself up to be cornered pretty much. Mishima might have already like planned with that. Shura might have a strategy in case something gets down to that, but I don't really know what he's gonna do to contend up against 3 people that should be stronger than him. Like, even if Shura is on level with one of the Interstellar or the Galactica, he's not on level with 3 of them. Because Eraser, Jaguar, and Justice are all there. All it would really take is all 3 of them to convene. Like, if they all 3 showed up the Narrow 66 right now, like, for whatever reason they all just showed up, Shura's plan is done. Shura would be done. Like, there would be nothing that he could do about it. And especially, like if Elsie showed up, like, on top of, like, Shiki coming after him as well, he's just in a bad spot because, like, especially because, like, the oceans are all done. The only other person that he has is Izuna, so, like, maybe Izuna has some crazy power that's gonna help him. Maybe that's why he likes her, the whole Red String of Fate. Maybe it's through her power that he's able to, like, he's, like, seeing a pathway to victory. Maybe she has some, like, OP ability through it that she's able to do. Like, maybe she can, like, use that power to set save points so he can redo certain scenarios in case he fails. Like, kind of like how Nero has the Emperor's Dice. Maybe he's using Izuna to essentially have his own kind of cheat method of governing and fighting. So, good chapter, really solid. Definitely one of my favorite Eden Zero chapters in a while. Like, I like this. The previous couple chapters were fun. Obviously, seeing the overdrives were enjoyable. I still think that they were happening a little bit too quickly. Just, like, if Mishima decides that, like, the overdrives are going to be in stages, like, this is just kind of like the entry stage to overdrive, that I think that'll be, like, a good way to fix the current scenario, because I do agree that, like, overdrives going out too quickly does take a little bit away from the hype of it, and you can still like the designs and, like, the characters and stuff, getting them is still cool, but it doesn't have nearly as much of a hype moment of when a character gets overdrive versus, like, again, the easiest one, I know people have been arguing about this for, like, the past couple weeks, is Dragon Force, because, like, anytime a character got Dragon Force, it was, like, a big deal. You knew shit was about to go down. You knew that, like, okay, they've just turned up, they're about to unleash on their opponent, whereas, like, overdrive is still cool, but we just had, what, 4 overdrives in the span of a couple chapters? Like, what was it, like 10 chapters? We've had, like, 4 overdrives. We had Omora's, Wise's, Jin, and Sylph's all, like, within such a short span that it just, like, with that setup, it's just like, okay, well then, who's the next person in overdrive? It just seems like overdrives are going out way too quickly. And then, I wanted to mention a little bit at the end, because, like, some people were saying, like, I didn't talk about it too much. And Jin and Homura were the ones that I was like, okay, Jin for sure should have it. Homura was, like, I was on the fence of, but, like, she had it, and then I was like, well, Jin has to have it. Wise and Sylph, I was not too keen on having. The saving grace for Wise is, like, with that updated, like, the cool weird backwards, he's got my favorite overdrive design so far. But it's a my opinion, it's not something that's bad for the story. It's just something that's, like, more from a reader standpoint of it. It just makes it seem a little bit less, it's less of, like, an intense hype moment of, like, when a character gets overdrive currently. So I'm hoping Mishima can add something like, oh, this is overdrive in its first state. There's 3 levels to it or something. And so we can kind of gain that level again to where once somebody goes up in stage, it will add way more of a, like, a big hype, like, reveal. But anyway, other than that, though, comment below. Thumbs up the video, friend, like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. Other than that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.